Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Kelvin Chin, and he's going to tell us about his near-death experience, which I believe was drowning when you were 20.
Yep, close.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just feel free to start wherever you like.
Yeah,
And take as
sure.
long as you like. Okay.
Sure. So yeah, I was 20, I was 21 years old. Yeah. I just turned 21 and I almost drowned in the Pacific Ocean. I say Pacific Ocean because it was the ocean. It was big, vast, deep, let's just say. And there's something about, I swim a lot, I swim in pools. There's something about swimming in the ocean. It feels differently than even swimming in a deep swimming pool. I'm just saying, there's something about the big black darkness of the ocean that's a little bit different from swimming in a pool. But I was 21 years old, and let me just step back for a second. So what happened before I had my near-death experience, and this is a little bit of an unusual near-death experience. I have a lot of clients who've had near-death experiences. I've heard hundreds of them at least, and I've helped people process them, et cetera, et cetera. Mine was a little bit different from a lot of there's a range, as you know, because you've heard hundreds of stories, I'm sure. There's a wide range of near or nearing death experiences. Mine was a little bit unusual, as you and I previously discussed. But before I get into it, let me just say that I had learned to meditate about 2 years before. And I'm not going to get into the whole meditation thing and everything. I'm just going to make that statement because for 2 years, every day, I've been meditating a couple times a day. And, I even went on a couple of these longer retreats that many of your audience probably knows about. Sometimes can happen in meditation, situations. You can go away for a weekend or a week and you can meditate extra. I did a whole bunch of those over a 2-year period. Bottom line is I was very, very steeped, you could say, in the experience of my mind having an experience that was different from my usual waking state mind. Let's just leave it at that. So my mind was comfortable with the vastness of itself. I was very familiar with that from 2 years every day, multiple times a day meditating when I had this past life. I mean, not this past life, sorry. Fast forwarding too far to this near-death experience in 1972. So I went to summer school. And the other material point to this near-death experience is that I grew up on the East Coast. So I grew up in Massachusetts, a suburb of Boston. The point is, when I went to the ocean, I'd been to Cape Cod. That was it. I'd never been to any other part of the East Coast ocean or anything like that. And I'd never been to the West Coast before in my life, before I flew there for summer school at the UCSD campus in San Diego in La Jolla, California. Those people who know that area, you know where I'm talking about. And it's a beautiful campus. I went there for summer school and I met this girl at the registration desk, and we just started chatting. And turns out we happened to be in the same program that summer, an intensive language program for 8 or 10 weeks. Okay, so I met her. And I said, well, class doesn't start till tomorrow. Want to go to the beach? She goes, oh, great. I said, where are you from? Turns out she's from New England also. She's never been to the Pacific Ocean either. So both of us, go get our bathing suits. We meet back at the registration desk. We walk down, and those people who know the UCSD campus, you can literally just walk, maybe it's a half a mile at the most, and you go down this side, this driveway, and it goes right down to the beach. Black's Beach is called. It's part of Torrey Pines State Park Beach. So we go down there, and it's a beautiful June day. There's nobody there. I mean, it's a gorgeous day. We're the only two people that we can see on our section of the beach anyway. And there's no lifeguards. There's never any lifeguards there. All right. So we get in the water, and I'm in the water. We're in the water about, I don't know, maybe hip deep, maybe waist deep. And it's a hot June day, so we just dunk, So I dunk. I lift my feet up. The next thing you know, I'm starting to get pulled out in the ocean. Now, I don't know what a rip current is, but I learned soon after that what a rip current was. Those of you who've been the West Coast know they go from Alaska down to Mexico. They're in the Caribbean. They're all over the world, rip currents. Basically, they're rivers in the ocean. that generally go from the ocean and they go into the shore. They whip along the shore and they whip back out to the ocean, the open ocean. It's a river. It's a current, strong current. I'm getting pulled out. Now, I didn't know why, how, what was going on. All I saw was these 300-foot high cliffs getting smaller and smaller. And I could see them literally getting smaller fast. I mean, I must have been moving fast if I could see them getting smaller with my naked eye. And I was freaking out. So I freaked out. She's not in the rip current. She must have been 20 feet away from me when I dunked under. And whatever reason, she was maybe standing on the ground or she was outside the rip current, whatever, I get pulled out. And I asked a friend of mine more recently when I never talked about this until a few years ago, maybe 3-4 years ago, right before COVID, I started talking about this experience. So I asked a friend of mine about how far out I was. And my friend knows because he was a merchant seaman. He is a captain on these big, huge 600, 800-foot freighters and so forth. So I said, his name is Cayman. I said, Cayman, these 300-foot high cliffs are about 3 or 4 inches high. How far out was I? He goes, oh, that's easy. He said, you were 1.7 miles out. I was like, wow. And so bottom line is I'm freaking out emotionally. And I'm going to, hopefully nobody in the audience ever has this experience. But if you do, I'm going to tell you some information that might save your life. You don't do what I do. What I did was I swam right straight in, and it's really illogical. I know it was stupid, but I was panicking, and because I'm going right back into the current. So now I'm getting more tired and more tired and more exhausted because I'm going right back into the current that just pushed me out really, really fast in a matter of, I don't know how many seconds, but not that long, maybe a minute or something, and I'm almost 2 miles out. You go like this. You go at an angle to the beach. I learned that in Boy Scouts, and I completely panicked and forgot about it, okay? So you go at an angle to the beach because maybe that's going to get you out of the current that's pulling you out in the first place. Instead, I'm going right back into the current. I am so exhausted. I just physically, I don't think I can swim and I'm not getting anywhere. I might even be getting pulled out farther. I don't know, but I'm not getting any closer to those 300-foot high cliffs that are 3 inches tall now. And so I start going down. So what happens is I start going down, and just like in the movies, you see the surface of the water here, and now it's here, and you start going down, you see the surface of the water going farther and farther away from you. It's a very, let's just say, distressing visual image. And so, I'm going down, and what happened was I left my body. In a split, what I'm describing to everybody here, this happened in a millisecond. Everything I'm describing happened in a probably a second or two at the most, really fast. So I left my body, but I recognized that I was leaving my body. It didn't surprise me because I'd been meditating for 2 years. I swear, I think that saved my life because I was not like, oh wow, I'm leaving my body. I recognized my mind popped out, so to speak, figuratively speaking, and I saw myself going down, and I just in a split second I said no, and I willed myself back in. So this is a good example. I teach this in my classes, my afterlife classes. This is a good example of free will, and free will is desire. I just had a subtle desire, and my mind went right back in. That's how subtle choice is. So a lot of times people think, oh, you make choices in life. It's like, I choose to do that. Well, that's a choice. But desire is also a subtle choice. And my mind went right back into my body. And I now I'm about 4 or 5 feet down, okay, because my body is still going down. And I struggled to get to the surface. Just 4 or 5 feet was a struggle because I was so exhausted. And I flipped over my back and take your time. That's the only thought I remembered was to take my time because I was panicking the whole time. So I was taking time. Took my time. She said it took me about, she's guessing, we didn't have a watch, but she guessed it took me about an hour to swim back in. I crawled up on shore and I passed out. She said I slept for about 20, 30 minutes. I passed out because I was so exhausted. So it was not your typical you go to the other side and see Jesus or Buddha or God or angels or whatever. If I had that level of experience, I would not be here talking to you now because I would have been 50 feet down or 40 feet down or 100 feet down. And there's no way I would have been able to swim back to the surface if I had come back into my body after that many seconds. Because, you know, a lot of people have near-death experiences, and I've heard hundreds of them, and they're in it for probably many seconds in Earth time, sometimes many minutes in Earth time. Some people are in near-death experiences for hours and even days in Earth time. I would have been, my body would have been biologically dead, you know, because every second I'm going down another foot or something, I don't know what, in the water, sinking my body. So I pop right back in and boom. So it was it was a scary experience, and it was I don't know, you could call it a spiritually aha experience too at the same time. They can be, you can have both, you know.
Does that compare to where you go when you meditate?
Well, yeah, that was yes, because I didn't allow myself to go any farther out, right? Because I said no. So I chose to not go any farther out. It was when I say conscious decision, like I said, it was a subtle desire. You know, it was like, no. And I was just boom, millisecond back in. So so the short answer is yes and no, right? So it was like at the beginning of, so that's the yes part. And it was the no, it wasn't, I didn't go all the way out, right? Does that make sense?
I guess the difference would be is that you were at the point of no return.
I was at the choice. I was at that choice.
Yes, that's a choice. Where at meditation, you're not there. You're at a free will place, right?
Yes. Well, yes. Well, no, I think so. We're going to fast forward to something I wasn't even planning on saying today, which is my experience is now, look, I've been meditating for 52 years now, 52 years. I've been teaching meditation for 50 years. I've been meditating for 52 years, this lifetime. Never mind the other lifetimes when I've been Buddhist monks meditating and so forth, okay? My experience is that once we become that familiar with the vastness and all the different, we could call it colorations or permutations of our consciousness, which is, you know, I just call it our mind or soul, spirit, whatever. I use simple language. Mind, we can choose to leave if we want to.
And not return?
Yes. And not return into that physical body. Yes. And there are stories. I mean, many of your audience probably have read about or heard stories from different, you know, Indian gurus. They're typically Indian gurus, but you don't have to be Indian. You don't have to be a guru to have this experience. That's my teaching point, is it could be somebody in the Middle East. It could be somebody, you know, whatever. It could be a Christian monk, whatever. It doesn't matter what, or Christian, who knows what. It doesn't matter. The religion is irrelevant. But you very often, it typically come out of in Indian tradition, you hear people, the stories of the guru say, I'm leaving now, I'll see you later. And they leave their body, and their physical, biological body dies. That's a choice. So I think that once one becomes, and again, you don't have to be Indian, you don't have to be a guru. Any human being becomes familiar with that, all these different aspects of enough of the aspects. Because I don't think we ever are familiar with everything, but enough of our mind, it can be a choice.
Do you think that's almost like failure to thrive and babies in orphanages and old people in nursing homes that just will themselves?
It's a really good point, Peggy, because I was just going to say that, you know, but I wasn't going to use that phrase. But you're right. We see this not just with Indian gurus. We see this with loved ones. I mean, I've been with many people. Some people know that I help people with death and dying issues and fears about death and dying, and I've helped many people cross over and die. And I've physically been in the room with them at that moment. And so, yeah, how many people have seen their dead loved ones hang on long enough for the Aunt so-and-so or the daughter who's traveling and got stuck in O'Hare in Chicago trying to get cross-country in a snowstorm, and they hang on, and then they boom. She walks in the room, says, "Daddy, I love you." And then Daddy leaves.
I hear that, and then I hear as soon as they left the room, it's like they didn't want to do it with them there or something.
That too, exactly. Good, really good point. Because sometimes people don't want to be, they want to be alone. They don't want to They think it's going to be upsetting to their loved ones if they die when they're there, and so forth and so on. But you're right. But the choice, it's the choice thing. I'm not saying you can grow a new arm, a new leg. But we're talking about the soul here. We're talking about letting go of the physical coil. That's what we're talking about here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I connected to listening to your drowning because of a little OBE I had almost 2 years ago when I was real sick. I fainted, hit the bathroom floor.
Wow.
And just before I fainted, though, I was sitting on the toilet, and I told my husband, I'm going to lay down. I always lay down on the cold floor because I know I'm going to pass out. And he says, no, don't lay on that cold floor again tonight. Let me get you a blanket. So I was sitting up longer than what I needed to. And so that made me fall over. But so before I fell over, I was thinking, because I had been really, really sick for days. And I thought, I think I might die. And I was getting so weak and wore down. And I was thinking, like, conscious decision, is this what I want to do? And for some reason, Mary Neal's story come to mind when she drowned on a kayaking trip, that she said, thy will be done. And so that's what I said. I just kind of left it up to God, like, thy will be done. And then I hit the floor, and then I was outside of my body, or right beside my body, between my body and the wall. And it was like it was just a few seconds, but it was that conscious decision, because I could hear people talking almost if they were in the wall. There's this like divider, and all this was going on over there, like this big party, what I feel was heaven. And then there's this conscious awareness. I'm in the bathroom between the wall and my body, and I could hear my husband in the distance. I didn't see him yelling for me, but I was more curious. Like, curiosity killed the cat. Like, what are they saying? What are they saying? Like, there's so much curiosity. I mean, what are they saying in heaven? And I felt like one woman was speaking to me. I was like, what are you saying? And my husband's in the distance. It was like something let me know, like, curiosity killed the cat. If you continue, like, go to that party, you're not coming back. But if you want to come back, you need to listen to your husband. So I focused on him. It's like, baby, baby. He said my eyes was flickering and stuff. And so I thought about that when you were talking about yours, because it was just that. But it's that being in that outside of your normal existence into another existence, and there's a choice there.
Yes.
And it's a place in your, it's like we talk about this mind and soul, I don't know what words you use and things, but it's kind of like, for me, it's like mind and soul. And then, I talked to you a little bit this morning on Facebook. It's like, it makes me think of after my 5-year-old drowning, and after my second NDE at 25, there was moments some time afterwards that something triggered my memory of that near-death experience. And both times there was a conscious war in my head. There was, with the drowning, it was, I remember running around that yard playing with them kids. And I remember going out of the houses, and this voice comes in and says, you did not do that. You could not do that. It's like, well, yes, I did. I remember that you could not have. And it's so strange that 5 years old, and then 20 years later, after my second NDE, when something prompted me to remember that NDE, thought was, wait a minute, this sounds real familiar, what I'd heard. And I was, I remembered it was real. The NDE, the heaven experience, it was real. And that voice come in. It was not, it couldn't have been, but it was. And so that is where I'm really confused. I mean, how does a person make sense of that?
So see, the thing is, first of all, let's distinguish here, okay? So is it possible that those voices could be actual voices of other minds, other souls, beings, we'll just say, who are disincarnate, they don't have a physical biological body, and that we're hearing their thoughts, or in the form of what you're just describing? Is that possible? Yes. And then is it also possible it's your own mind kind of arguing with itself, so to speak, because there's some doubt there, and there's some inner conflict within you? Not that you're, having a multiple personality thing, like you said I saw your Facebook post about it. Not that, but no, we all have that. Everybody, if everybody's honest, everybody has had these different, like, should I do that or should I not do that? That's what that could be internal. So it could be external, could be internal. So those are the two possibilities. All right. So let's talk about the internal one, we'll talk about that one first. So the internal one, it happens. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing as long as we don't get all bound up in a pretzel and can't make a decision, then that's not good. Yeah. But I think it's good to have a rational and an intuitive side to ourselves operating in concert together, not in conflict all the time, but I think it's good to question ourselves. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's healthy. Oh, does that make sense? That kind of thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that, and in fact, I think my experience, personal experiences, and with my students, as we resolve, let's just say, some of our inner conflicts within ourselves, and as we resolve some of the emotional patterns we may have that we're not even aware of consciously, that may be driving our decisions and thinking and behavior sometimes, as we resolve some of those issues, then that conflict becomes less and less. But I think that the conflict is there, the questioning, not conflict, but maybe questioning is a better word, is not an unhealthy thing. I think it's good to be, to me, look, I've had a ton of spiritual experiences over the last 50 years. I'm still a skeptic. I mean, I still question, and I want to understand. It's not that I am questioning just to be a jerk with myself. Yeah. It's because I want to learn. I want to
want the truth.
Yeah, I want to understand it better. That's all, So I think that kind of questioning is healthy, is my point. Now let's talk about beings are there beings who sometimes disagree with each other about what's good for us? Absolutely. I have there's this NDE that this, I don't know the guy's name, but I heard about this. He's in San Francisco. He had an NDE, and the details of which is irrelevant. But in his NDE, his guru is on the other side, and there's a light being, what he describes as a very powerful light being on the other side. The two of them, the guru and the light being, are arguing with each other about what they think this guy should do. He's on the other side, and the guru saying, no, you should go back. You should go back. You got to finish that project, or whatever the heck they was working, whatever. You got work to do, blah, blah, blah. And the light being is going, no, you stay here. You just chill out, blah, 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 blah. And so there's this disagreement. So that's the other thing. It's a teaching point I use for my students, because you have to make your own mind up. And obviously the guy went with, he decided to come back. Obviously he wouldn't be telling the NDE, but that's a choice. He could have chosen not to, it's just a choice we make. So when people have NDEs, we often hear them say, well, I was over there and they said I had to go back, so they sent me back. They may have said to you that you should go back, just like the guru is saying to this guy in the NDE, but the guy he had to listen to him or not listen to him. That's a choice. That's a free will decision. So whether you remember that in your NDE, I'm talking a hypothetical person, not you, but that you made that decision, you did, because desire is a decision. Desire is making that choice.
Right? What do you think about the morality that tends to be on the other side when we hear these stories or have these experiences? To me, it seems to be, like you said, if someone's arguing this or no that, or like the life reviews. There's so much, it seems to me, there's wisdom and there's morality to this other side.
Yeah, the morality part, I attribute that to an individual mind's or group of minds belief systems. It's no different than on this side. What do we consider moral in our society? Well, it's moral to in our society, and not only just moral, but it's against the law to be, having, relations with a child, and we define child as under 18 years old. All right. So those are morality in our culture, in the US anyway, legal in some other countries too, but in the US, we'll just talk about the US. Those are moral and legal laws. Could it be on the other side? In my experience, you know, I've had many experiences on the other side, outside of my NDE, that there are groups of people who also share certain moral beliefs and would share them with those groups of people on the other side? Yes. The short answer is yes. It's very similar to this side in that respect. Obviously very different. We don't have biological bodies and all that kind of stuff. And we can travel really fast and so forth. But mentally, in terms of how the mental structure is of things, it's very similar to this side. So yeah, you could have people, individuals, and or groups of individuals who believe collectively that this is a moral, moral situation, law, rules, kind of guidelines, et cetera, and they'll promote those from the other side to this side through psychics and mediums.
So who do you think these people are on the other side? Are they all souls that lived before?
It's a mixture. My experience is a mixture. It's souls who have lived before in a physical, biological body somewhere. But there's other souls on the other side who have never been incarnated in a physical form before. And some people refer to them as angels. You know, some people use the word angels in just in a very, very broad sense. It means anybody who's on the other side. So it could be your dead grandmother is now an angel, or maybe your guardian angel or something on the other side. But typically when I use the phrase angel, I'm usually referring to beings who have never been in a physical form before, but who are conscious, individual thinking souls. I mean, when I say individual, it's just like you and I are individuals. We have different belief systems, thoughts, choices, and so forth. Same thing on the other side with angels and other beings who are never been in physical body.
First time I heard that, I was on Dr. Oz, and the medium he was having on there at the time, she said that too, that another lady that was on with me, she felt that her grandpa that she's seen on her in her NDE was an angel, and the medium said no, like you said, angels have never been born.
It depends on how, that's why I say it's a definition thing. You know, people will say, you know, well, you know, you say tomato, I say tomato, and the way I say it is the right way. And I'm like, yeah. You know, it's like,
yeah, like so much of this, like, who knows, you know, none of us can know anything.
But those are definitional things. What I find structurally is that both those people you just described are right in terms of, they're correct in terms of the general fact that there are beings on the other side who are light beings, and some of them might have been the dead grandmother and some of them aren't. So that structurally is factually accurate. How we define and we call them angels and those aren't angels, it's like, who cares, you know? Yeah.
How can anybody scientifically investigate, research any of this, can come to any conclusion?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because it goes to this idea of proof. And everybody wants like scientific proof. First of all, what a lot of people who are not scientists, a true scientist will admit the following, that nothing is absolutely provable. A real scientist will, you know, there are a lot of fake scientists out there, a lot of people with PhDs and MDs behind their name, and they don't know what science is. So they're just trying to promote their beliefs. That's what I call religion. They may not call themselves creating a religion, but that's what religion is. That's promoting belief. And there's nothing wrong with religion. There's nothing wrong with promoting beliefs. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's not scientific. So science is questioning and seeing what kind of reliable evidence can we have to back up the interpretations of experiences that people genuinely have. That's, to me, that's the thrust, that's the direction that science goes in, as opposed to religion and faith, which really doesn't care too much. It does a little bit sometimes, but it doesn't. It's more about, here's what we believe and here's why we believe it, and we want you to believe it too, which is fine. But the science approach is more, in a sense, you could say it's the philosopher's approach. It's, let's think about this and let's look at the experience, and then let's see if our interpretation of the experience makes sense or not. And make sense, I use that phrase in my teaching a lot. Does it make sense? Meaning what? Meaning, is it consistent? Can we consistently explain all those experiences, the wide range of different experiences, whether it be NDEs or other OBEs or spiritually transformative experiences, whatever? Can we consistently explain them with this explanation? And the more consistent, the more accurate, we'll say, the more consistent that explanation accurately describes that experience, to me, the closer it is to small t truth. I don't think there is a capital T. I think it's like there's all these interpretations. Because to your question, it's a really good question, because people are looking for proof all the time. You know, proof of heaven, proof of this, proof of that. The only, and what they mean by that is they want absolute proof. Okay, that's really what they mean when they say those words. And the reality is, there's only absolute proof in certain mathematical formulas, and we don't live in a mathematical formula. Last I checked, there's all these different interpretations. There's not one NDE. If there was one, it's just the NDE, and every NDE is, this is it, that's it. You might be able to prove that if it didn't happen, because then it's either it did happen or it doesn't happen. But you and I know from talking to so many people, there are hundreds or thousands and millions of different genuine NDE experiences that somebody would describe in different ways. It doesn't mean the NDE didn't happen. It's just the different interpretations. So can we understand this huge variety of NDE interpretations through a lens that's fairly consistent, but not, it cannot even be too specific, because if it's too specific, we're going to leave some of the NDEs out, you know? So can we include all the NDEs and talk about them in a way that makes sense, right?
Yeah, I've kind of learned over time, listening to NDEers, is to take the experience separate from the personality that's telling the experience, because after the experience then comes all their interpretations, what books they've read,
Yes.
you know, their religion, non-religion, whatever,
Yes.
and groups they've gotten into, because they told me this and this, therefore I think this.
Right.
And you can see where they just got off on all these different paths.
Yep.
But the NDE itself, I believe, is where the science is.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. I think that's a healthy way of looking at it. Yeah, because the NDE happened, all right? And however you're describing it is the way that person is describing it subjectively. The interpretations could be all over the map. But, you know, again, I look at what is consistent about that interpretation, and is there a consistency in the way the person describes it. But here's at the end of the day, it's their experience, like you're implying. And that's all that matters, because to me, we are each individual souls, on an eternal journey of figuring stuff out. And you could call that learning, you call it knowledge, I just call it figuring stuff out. And that's what we're doing. And some of us are better at figuring things out, and some people are not so good at figuring things out. But at whatever pace we're at is the pace we're at. You know, you can't speed up somebody's pace just by telling them to. You can help people, and that's what I do as a teacher, by, you know, trying to give people perspectives and, oh, look at it this way. Well, maybe you look at it this way. Maybe this is an explanation. Maybe that's an explanation. But, you know, it's going to be my interpretation of their experience. And ultimately, in the eternal journey of the soul, that person has to try to figure that out themselves. I can inspire them and I can give them ideas, but whether my ideas fit with how they think or not, they got to figure that out. You know, so I tell my students right up front, shelve whatever I say does not make sense, put it on a shelf. Maybe take it off the shelf and look at it in a week from now, or a year from now, or 5 years from now, whatever. Or you may never look at it, because it may never fit with how you think. That's okay. I'm here to just share ideas, perspectives, because we're all figuring it out. Everybody is.
Yeah. And my limited knowledge of science is that to do something and get a consistent result, and the only thing I can think of that I've had as far as spiritual things is that when I tell my NDE to a live group, it could be a couple people around a bonfire, in a big room, something happens that I cannot deny happens. I used to be really shy and I would never be speaking in public about anything, even in a small group. But when it comes to the first time I told my NDE, and it's been consistently when it's in public, is when I'm talking about hovering over the pond when I was 5 and I drowned, I am actually hovering over the pond. When I talk about 20 years later, that NDE, or I go through the tunnel and I'm a bright white light, I am actually in the bright white light and I am there. And there's no fumbling with words or trying to think what to say. It's like I can feel energy coming through my fingertips. I feel I have harnessed something and I am out of my, I don't want to say body, but out of that normal consciousness, thinking, the doubting and all those things,
Right.
into somewhere that is completely free and released of that. And it's like in another space and time almost.
Yes.
And that is consistent.
That's consistent. Let me use your example and let me draw some teaching points from your great example there. So that is a beautiful description of a couple of your NDEs experience. The experience, like you said earlier, it's genuine, it's real. You can't deny that. Some person named Pegi Robinson had that experience. Okay, great. What can we draw from that that are teaching points that are across NDEs that's consistent? To me, it's how you define me. It's and I. I am in the experience. It's my thing. It's my, I am hovering above the water. I'm 5 feet above the water. Okay. Who's the I? Who's the me in that experience? The me in that experience is not your physical body. It's your mind, your soul, your consciousness. What's the teaching point from that potentially? Is that our mind and our body are separate and distinct? Yes, they influence each other. We know that. You get sick, it affects your mind, so forth, so on. Vice versa. We can get stressed out. We can make our physical body sick. It works both ways. But that's not the point. Influence is not the point. The point is that the mind and the body are actually separate from each other. And your experience, and most people and most NDEs are going to describe that in that same way, and describe it in a different way, but describe the same point, which is the mind-body being separate. Those are key. And the other key teaching point that you said, which is you talked about energy, okay, fingertips and so forth. So our mind is separate distinct from our body. But what is the mind? The mind to me is energy. And does it influence the body? Yes, you can influence the body, but is it distinct from the physical biological body? So our physical energy body, we could call that physical because a physicist would say, yeah, that's physical because you can measure its energy. Okay, fine. But it's not the biological. So that's another teaching point. And a third teaching point out of what you said, which is going to be true across NDEs, regardless of how subjective they describe it, it's different from yours and The other, consistent teaching point to draw from these is that when our mind experiences the largeness, the vastness of itself, bigger than the waking state mind that's looking at a piece of paper here. That part of my mind is part of my mind. Yeah, I'm looking at a piece of paper. I'm holding a piece of paper. Okay, that's my conscious waking state mind. But what you're describing, and these NDEs, ears, and other people have spiritually transformative experiences are describing, is a part of their mind that's not just the one that's looking at this piece of paper. It's bigger than that. And so that's the other teaching point. That's a consistent teaching point that runs throughout all of these experiences. Sometimes people will call it freedom. They'll feel bigger, more expanded. People use different adjectives, but it's all descriptive of the fact that our mind is much bigger than we think it is. Our soul, our spirit, our consciousness, whatever word you want to substitute. That is a consistent theme throughout all these experiences. Those to me are key teaching points because that helps reduce suffering in our physical reality. When we start to realize we are more than just the physical biological body.
I think the words I am are very important too, because I noticed going through the tunnel at 25, when I thought about it later, all the thoughts I had started with I am. I am going so far through space. I am so sorry, my children, I had to leave you. I am this and that. And then when I started telling, I started noticing this I am is just coming and coming.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
when I
it's beautiful.
explained to you a while ago how I felt when I talk, I noticed the I am was coming out
Yes.
again.
It's beautiful because that phrase I am, to me, from a teaching, I'm a teacher, so I'm always looking, what's the teaching point out of that? To me, the phrase I am has two major teaching points out of it. One is that there's this I, as I already said, that's separate from my body because I am continuing, even though my body is not doing so well right now. There's an I am that's continuing. And then the I part of the I am that's continuing points to what I refer to as our personality. That's the phrase that I use, that there's an identifiable me. Yeah. So I call that personality sometimes. But there's something that's identifiable about Kelvin Chin that's different from Pegi Robinson. Okay. I call that personality. That I, your I, is different from my I. It's not the same I, capital I. It's not the same. And that uniqueness of our souls, to me, is a beautiful thing. And it's something that needs to be embraced and recognized and enjoyed and appreciated.
I can't help but wonder if that's why we don't come to Earth and have an existence, is to be I am, is to be more than just a
to
spirit.
Express. Well, and to express. To me, it's to express in physical reality what we cannot express on the other side, which is not a physical biological reality. Again, the physicists would argue with us and say, well, it's still a physical reality because it's energy. Okay, fine. But it's not, we can agree that that's the case, but it's not like Earth on the other side. And we don't, but the thing is, we still retain our personality on the other side. Otherwise, who's the psychic talking to on the other side? They're not talking to cosmic soup. They're talking to a being on the other side who's retaining their individual consciousness, their individual soul, spirit, mind. And then, but we can come back for any number of reasons. We can come back to just learn more lessons. We can come back. Some people just come back for the soft serve ice cream. I jokingly but seriously say, they come back for the partying. I don't know. But some of us, like myself, I come back to help people and I come back to learn more about myself. But not everybody's like me and not everybody should be like me. It would be a boring world if everybody was like Kelvin Chin, I would say. I wouldn't want to live with a whole bunch of me's.
So you teach afterlife classes? What's that like?
Yeah. So I teach afterlife classes. It's a 6-part series. I'm in the middle of one right now. Another one starting in the middle of January. They can go to kelvinchin.org and look it up under the programs when the actual data starts. But it's a 6-part series, usually every other week, and I do a 2-hour class. And I talk about what it's like on the other side. I talk about what it's like when we die. I talk about NDEs and out-of-body experiences, getting glimpses from this side, in other words, to the other side. I talk about, is there punishment? Is there consequences? What about this idea of karma and dharma and hell and sin and all this stuff? I talk about that in one of the sessions. And I talk about reincarnation. I talk about past lives and how we can come back if we want to. Nobody has to. But if you want to, you can come back whenever you feel like it. Past lives, future lives. I talk about soul plans. I talk about communicating with the other side, how that has happened for me since 1986. Spontaneously, that started happening. And I talk about soul plans and eternity and how we move forward. Again, no beginning, no end. That's what my logic tells me. Obviously, my experiences go back 6,000 years in terms of my memories, but different lifetimes, which I'm writing my 3rd book on that. I should send you my book, by the way. I have 2 books.
Okay.
Give me your mailing address and I'll send you my 2 books here.
Okay.
I have one on overcoming the fear of death, and this one is a collection of 67 essays on how to live life. So this one's about death. This one's about life. The purple one's about living life, like about love and forgiveness and how to live move forward and live life, through various lenses, 67 essays, self-interest, ego, balance, all these different topics I talk about.
Even though you didn't start talking about your NDE till 3 or 4 years ago, do you
Yeah.
think that consciousness outside your body for those few seconds has changed you, made you the teacher you are?
Oh, it's definitely contributed to it for sure. I mean, and so was the 2 years of meditating before that, and whatever I did when I was a kid. I don't know. I used to talk to angels when I was 2 years old. I don't. 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old. I don't remember that. You know how I know is my several third parties, not me. In other words, my aunts, my mother's sisters, who were younger than my mom was the eldest, and her younger sisters were in college and high school. Still living at home. And so I would go to my grandparents' house, and they told me this when I was a teenager. I don't even remember this. I'm pretty sure that I buried it because they kind of made fun of me a little bit when they were teenagers, right? Oh, Kelvin, oh, he's playing with his invisible friends. He's playing with his angels. Yeah, right. And I got pissed off at them when they told me this when I was a teenager. I didn't remember the experience. I remembered how I felt. I got angry with them. I was like, kind of really pissed off at them, because I think that's what the pissed offness was, because they were kind of looking down at me when I was a year or two old, talking to my angel friends, But yeah, so I think the NDE definitely contributed to it for sure. And who knows? I don't know. You can't connect the dots exactly, but maybe that helped contribute to my remembering my past lives about 5 years later,
My first memory, I'm in the baby bed, and I telling God, which how did I, at a baby, before I had language, know anything about God and tell anybody anything? But this is my earliest memory, is I'm telling God, you sent me to the wrong family. You made a mistake. These people are weird. They don't like me. And I was in this bedroom, I'm in a baby bed, and it's dim. And through the doorway, there's light in that room. I think it's the living room. The kids are running, older siblings running back and forth playing. And I'm telling God, I need to be switched to my correct family. I know he wouldn't send me here, because in this memory, I have a memory of being in this white place where these women took such good care of me, like every wish was my demand.
Yeah.
And so I knew God wouldn't send me to something like this.
Yeah. Were you having the experience in the womb or after being born?
I was in a baby bed, but the white
so you were already
experience
born.
is like before I was ever born.
No, but the conversation we got was while you're in the bed, in the house. So you're already in a physical body. Got it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, now you're going to learn from this, Peggy, and you're going to need to have this conversation, a clear conversation, before you go into the physical biological body, come down the chute into the family. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's serious. I mean that seriously. I say this to my students in my afterlife class. I say, whether you believe anything, that I'm saying in this class about experiences over, it really doesn't matter. If I can help you think more clearly about choices you're making on this side, you're going to make better choices on the other side. And I didn't use your example, but I'll start using it. But it's like, because we need to make better choices and be very clear with those who are helping us make choices on the other side, so we end up in the right family. Because can mistakes happen? Yeah, they can. It can. And so, a lot of it's communication, and need to be clear in our communications. And sometimes, that bumper sticker at SHIT happens, a bumper sticker came out in the 90s. Remember, it was in the Forrest Gump movie and stuff. I remember, it's like, it's true. Sometimes that happens, and you just like, okay, I gotta make the best of this.
I'm trying to remember that quote in Forrest Gump, where Forrest Gump is asking, like, is life like
A bowl of cherries,
like a box of chocolates, your mom says you never know what you're going to get. He
Yes.
says, or is it like random, like kind of like this feather they show blown in the wind? And he says, I think it's a little bit of both.
Yes.
And I just love that part, because
It
that's kind of
really
like the
is
mind and the
profound.
spirit.
It's very profound. It's very profound. It goes to the point where like I'll use this as a teaching example. People will say, well, but this was supposed to happen because like this happened to me the other day. I went out with my sister and brother-in-law. They're visiting from Boston. I live in Los Angeles. And we went out with my kids and we went out to dinner. And I got a parking spot literally right in front of the restaurant. I mean, it never happens, right? I mean, it's right. There are only two spots in front of the restaurant. I get one of them. Okay. So like, yep. And so people would go, some people would look at it. Well, is that supposed to happen because God or some angel or your guardian angel or your whatever, created that spot? And is it supposed to happen? So two things can be the case. It can be that it was an accident. And it also could be that some friend of mine on the other side whispered to the guy and said, hey, go out to your car and move it now, like whatever. And then the space was vacant for me when I pulled up 5 minutes or 3 minutes or 30 seconds later or whatever. Both can be true. It's not always, it doesn't mean that when these kind of magical things happen, which they can happen to anybody, it doesn't mean that everything is always happening because, somebody made it happen. But sometimes somebody can make these things happen either from this side or the other side. And that can happen. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as a baby, I thought you sent me the wrong family and I was waiting to be switched and I wasn't. And I felt like silence was my answer. I was abandoned. I was like, you're on your own now. And now that I'm 61, I look back at all these things through my life, kind of like puzzle pieces coming together. And it feels like I was meant to have the family I was given so I could be helping in a way that I'm helping now that most people wouldn't understand. Like with you, with spirituality, or, I also work with child abuse stuff. And there's things that people would not understand if we didn't have the experience we did and have a voice and come forward.
Yeah. The thing is, to me, sometimes things can be planned out. Sometimes things go not according to plan. That means soul plans as well. But in either case, to me, it's less important to figure out was it planned or not planned. What's more important is what you're saying, which is, what did you do with it? What did you do with it? How did you use that experience and circumstances and whatever it is? And did you use it in a hurtful way, or did you use it in a helpful way, either for yourself and or others or both? To me, that's where the rubber meets the road. To me, that's what spirituality is. We're seeking out more knowledge about who we are and about the universe and our relationships with other people, and how can we improve that? To me, that's how I view spirituality.
Yeah, I think of, say two people become paraplegic, and one may be working to get somebody to pull the plug, assisted suicide, while the other was saying, dictate, I want to write a book. It's like we have choices that we may not see that we have. And I kind of look at the NDEs as they're all these gifts. And I kind of picture kids sitting around this Christmas tree, and each NDE is a gift. And it's like, say, what you do with it.
Yes, absolutely. It's what you do with it. We are given, people talk about gifts. We're giving gifts. We're given gifts, and we're giving gifts to ourselves, and other people are giving us gifts all the time in the context of in the way that you're talking about. And it's what do we do with them? Do we use them? Do we see them as gifts, first of all? And do we use it as an opportunity, a vehicle? Is the way I think of it, a vehicle to channel our ourselves, our beliefs, our values, and therefore our choices, in order to move forward in a positive direction. To me, that's how I view my life anyway. Yeah.
And I'd like to say, use for good, but then that is so, the good and the bad, and so many gray.
It's so much gray, And it's like, that's why I say phrases in my teaching. I say to try to not hurt people as much as possible, because nobody is perfect. And look, if you're tired, like I give the example sometimes, hey, have I hurt my kids' feelings at times? Yes. Do I regret it? Yes. Was I maybe too tired or too like hungry at the time, and I needed some sugar in my glucose in my, or nutrients in my bloodstream, so I didn't snap at them at times in my life? Yes, we've all done that. But what have we done to mitigate, to lessen the likelihood of these instances? That's a good person to me. Nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's great points. One thing that I do want to mention to the audience is I am doing a Q&A live on 30th November. So in a couple of weeks, I'm going to do a question and answer live, and they can go to my website, kelvinchin.org, and on the homepage, scroll down a little bit, and they'll see something about this 30th November event.
Next Wednesday. Okay.
Yeah, is that next Wednesday? Guys, it's coming up soon, 30th November. So
Oh, wait. Oh, wait. No, it's week after that. Sorry.
Couple of weeks. Two Wednesdays, right? In 2 Wednesdays. Yep. Yeah. And at 12 o'clock Pacific, so what's that? 3 o'clock Eastern time and so forth. 8 o'clock in the UK, over in London and so forth, Scotland, etc. I'm going to do a Q&A about a talk that was given in 2014. So it's the 8th year anniversary of a talk that I helped organize in 2014. It's called 30th November, and people can watch it at 30thnovember.com. So 30thnovember.com. What it is a talk about the history of spirituality on planet Earth over the last 7,000 to 10,000 years through the eyes of, through the minds of the souls, the consciousness, through the minds of, from the perspective of the leaders who started the Judeo-Christian, Islamic, and Vedic traditions. So Judeo, the Jewish tradition, Christian, Islamic, and Vedic. Vedic is Hinduism, Buddhism, and those kind of sub areas of the Vedic tradition. The leaders of those traditions came through a number of us in 2014, and my friend George Hammond was tapped with giving the talk. It's called 30thnovember.com, 30thnovember.com. You go to the 30th November website and you can watch that. I am going to do a Q&A about it for anybody who's watched it around the world. I'm going to do a worldwide live Q&A, what'd you say, in a couple of Wednesdays from now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I encourage people to check that out. It's very interesting. It kind of explains a lot of inconsistencies in different religions, why certain inconsistencies happened. And I'll just leave it at that. So if people are curious, check it out. It's very informative, and a lot of people who've seen it, whether they be my Christian friends, my Muslim friends, my Buddhist friends, my whatever, Hindu friends, etc., Jewish friends, have come back and said to me, wow, that answered this question I've been having for 40 years of walking around. I've had this question for 35 years. I've had this question for 60 years. I've been wondering, well, that makes sense. So it'll kind of address a lot of things, because it's information that's shared from the spiritual leaders who started those 4 major traditions. So check it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that we didn't get to cover?
I think we're good. So yeah, it was great to chat with you. People can, as I said, they can find me. The easiest way is just kelvinchin.org. They can subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's called Kelvin Chin Turning Within, is the name of my YouTube channel. There's about 120 videos there and so forth. And if people are interested in my meditation class, again, they just go on my website, check it out, send me an email via my contact page. And I do everything through my nonprofit, so I'm here to help people. So one of the things that I offer is a free phone session with anybody in the world about any of the topics that I cover in any of the work that I do. Free phone session. And whether people have fears or anxieties or just general questions about afterlife or this or that, they can feel free to go and contact Paige on any of my websites and send me an email, set it up.
Now, your afterlife classes, is that an online?
Yes, thank you. For the afterlife class, it's gonna, the next one's going to start. That'll be the 15th time I'm doing the afterlife class, series of 6. It'll start in the mid-January. It's all done on Zoom. Yeah.
Okay.
So and I do a recording of it live. They're all done live. I do a live recording. People ask questions, so forth. People miss a session, they can then go and watch the recording. They never miss it. So
see, I like that because I get nervous on any kind of live event, especially when other people are on there. You don't know these people and they're asking questions, and so I like to watch things afterwards like that.
Yeah, and people like you could send me questions anonymously, and I'll answer them live, and then you'll watch me answer your questions. Whatever. Yeah, that's fine. Yep, people are shy sometimes. It's fine. Good. Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Take care.